The mining moon of Ravel 9 was a forgotten place, a cracked rock turning slowly around a red dwarf star. Every day felt the same. Dust storms, broken machines, and the sound of tired miners walking through metal corridors. Most people came to the moon only because they were desperate humans, aliens, refugees, anyone who had nowhere else to go. Life here was hard, and survival was the only goal. Elias Ward, a young human engineer, lived on this moon for almost 2 years. He fixed antennas, maintained old engines, repaired cracked pipelines, and tried to keep the communication towers alive even when the system AI refused to cooperate. Elias was calm, patient, and quiet. He never caused trouble. He worked, he ate, he slept, and he avoided fights. But even with his calm nature, he noticed things around him, things others ignored. One of those things was the alien girl. She appeared months ago. Nobody knew her name, her species, or her story. She wore torn fabric that used to be a dress but was now only hanging strips. Her body was thin, her skin covered in dust, and her hair messy like tangled threads. Most people looked away when she passed. Some pointed. A few laughed. She never fought back. She never spoke. She simply moved like someone who had forgotten how to live. Elias first saw her behind the supply depot, near a pile of discarded containers. He was adjusting a faulty power regulator when he heard the sound of metal cans shifting. When he turned, he saw her crawling on the ground, searching through scraps for half-eaten nutrient packs. She moved quickly, afraid someone would stop her. When she finally found a small piece of leftover food, she ate it immediately, not even chewing properly. A miner nearby chuckled. "Look at her, eating scraps like a dog." Elias felt something twist in his chest. She looked desperately hungry, so hungry that she forgot how to be human, or whatever species she was. He didn't say anything that day. He just watched silently as she disappeared behind a stack of broken crates. For the next few days, Elias noticed her again and again. Every time he crossed the central yard or walked past the waste units, she would be somewhere nearby, searching, sniffing, digging. She never asked for help. She avoided everyone except children, who sometimes dropped crumbs of food when they walked. Even then, she waited until they left before she picked anything up. One evening, Elias finished repairing a communication panel. When he reached the back of the repair hut, he saw the girl curled near a wall, shivering from the night wind. Her eyes were closed, and she looked like she might faint. Elias didn't know why he stopped. He just quietly placed the food pack on the ground a few steps away from her. She didn't react, so he gently cleared his throat. Her eyes opened instantly wide, scared, sharp. She scrambled back, hitting the wall behind her. Elias lifted both hands to show he meant no harm. "It's okay," he said softly. "Food. For you." He pushed the pack a little closer and then stepped back. She watched him, confused and unsure. After a long silence, she crawled forward slowly and picked it up. Her fingers trembled as if she expected someone to snatch it away. She opened it and ate quickly, but carefully this time. Elias didn't move. He simply smiled once, then walked away so she could eat without fear. The next day, he left another food pack in the same place. And another. And another. The girl began to wait there at the same hour, crouching behind the corner. Each time Elias approached, she watched him silently. She still didn't speak, but she no longer ran. After a week, something changed. She stood up when he came. She didn't stand tall, not yet, but she was no longer crawling on all fours. She met his eyes for a moment. Elias nodded, and she lowered her head shyly. Her face was thin, but now Elias could see something different beneath the dirt. Her eyes were large and bright. Her skin had soft patterns, glowing faintly under the moonlight. Her hair, though messy, had a strange beauty. She didn't look like a wild creature. She looked like someone who once lived a noble life, but had fallen into misery. Elias began talking to her softly, even though she never answered. He told her about his work, about how machines broke every day, about how he hoped to leave this moon someday. She listened. He could feel it. She followed the sound of his voice like a small light in a dark place. One night, trouble started. A group of rough miners saw her near the garbage units. They were drunk and loud. One of them grabbed a stone and threw it at her feet. She jumped back, frightened. "Get out of here, stray," one shouted. Another laughed. "Maybe she'll bark if we poke her." Before they threw another stone, Elias stepped between them. His voice was calm but firm. "Enough." The miners frowned. "What's it to you?" "She's nothing." Elias didn't argue. He only said, "Go." Maybe it was the quiet confidence in his eyes, or maybe they were too drunk to fight. The miners muttered insults, but eventually left. When they disappeared, Elias turned to the girl. She was trembling, hugging herself tightly. Elias didn't touch her, but he gave her space to breathe. "You're safe now," he said softly. For a moment, she looked up at him, with eyes full of fear and something else. Gratitude. After that night, she began staying closer to him. Sometimes, she followed him through the repair yard, watching his tools and copying his movements with childlike curiosity. She tried to mimic how he stood, how he walked, even how he cleaned his hands. It was as if she were remembering how to be herself again. Elias noticed strange details. Her wrist had a faded sigil, an elegant symbol formed from interlocking shapes. He had never seen a scavenger with such markings. Her posture, even when tired, carried a natural grace. Her eyes had a steady depth, like someone trained in discipline and etiquette. She wasn't ordinary. One evening, while sitting near the small generator hut, Elias asked softly, "Do you have a name?" She didn't answer. She touched her chest lightly, as if trying to remember something. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. After a few seconds, she lowered her head again. "It's okay," Elias whispered. "You can tell me when you're ready." She watched him with a strange expression, half fear, half trust. Later that night, something happened that made Elias more certain she wasn't who people thought she was. A meteor shower streaked across the sky, sending bright lines of light over the mining moon. Everyone stopped to watch. The girl stepped out into the open yard and looked up, not like a scavenger, but like someone who had seen this view many times before. Her expression changed from fear to longing. She raised one hand as if reaching for the sky. Elias stood quietly behind her. "You've seen places better than this, haven't you?" he said. She didn't answer, but her eyes glistened. A faint whisper escaped her lips so soft, he almost missed it. "Home." It was the first clear word she had spoken. Elias felt his heart tighten. This girl wasn't born in dirt. She belonged somewhere else, somewhere important. He didn't push her to talk more. He simply stayed beside her as the meteor lights washed over the dusty yard. The following days were peaceful. She grew stronger. She walked properly. She spoke tiny words. Food. Safe. Thank. Though her voice was always soft. She kept her distance from others but stayed close to Elias. Then everything changed. One afternoon, as Elias handed her a warm food pack, she opened it carefully. But before she could eat, her sleeve slipped slightly. Elias saw the sigil clearly this time. A golden mark shaped like an ancient crest, symbols of an empire that collapsed years ago after a devastating war. He remembered seeing the crest in old reports. It belonged to the Athelian royal line. He stared, shocked. She pulled her arm back quickly, hiding the mark. She looked scared, not of him, but of what the truth meant. Elias didn't say anything. He only asked quietly, "Are you Someone important? Her lips trembled. Her eyes filled with tears, but she tried to hold them back. After a long pause, she whispered something broken and fragile. Princess Lirash. The name echoed in Elias's mind. Princess Lirash was believed dead. Every news network had declared her lost during the fall of the Athelian Empire. But she was here, on a mining moon, eating scraps to survive. Elias didn't ask more. He only spoke gently, with kindness that made her shoulders relax. "You're safe with me." She looked at him deeply, as if she had been waiting months to hear those words. And for the first time since he met her, she smiled a small, weak smile, but real. Elias realized that the starving girl he found in the trash was not a stray, not a beggar, not a lost mind. She was a princess hiding under dust and fear. And now that her secret was out, danger was coming. He just didn't know how soon. After the moment when Lyra whispered her true name, the world around Elias seemed to change. The mining moon felt more dangerous, the shadows deeper, and every stranger felt like a possible threat. He knew now that the girl he had been feeding in secret was not just a lost survivor, she was Princess Lirash of the Athelian royal line, believed dead for years. If anyone found out, she would be hunted, captured, or worse. Lyra herself didn't understand how valuable she was. Or maybe she understood too well, which was why she had chosen silence for so long. When Elias tried speaking to her after she revealed her name, she looked frightened, as if expecting him to take advantage of her truth. Instead, he simply sat down beside her and offered a gentle smile. "I won't tell anyone," he said softly. "You're safe with me. I promise." She watched him carefully, searching his face for any sign of falsehood. When she saw none, her shoulders relaxed. Her eyes softened. She whispered only one word: "Thank." From that day, Lyra changed. She still avoided crowds, and she still hid behind structures when loud voices echoed through the yard. But she began trusting Elias more. She followed him openly now, walking behind him instead of creeping in shadows. When he worked on machines, she crouched nearby, watching his hands with quiet curiosity. One morning, she surprised him. He was fixing a busted cooling unit, and she gently touched the piping. "Broken. Here," she said. Elias blinked. She was right. The pressure line was leaking just under the surface. Her sharp eyes noticed details he missed. She was learning fast, too fast for someone who once crawled for scraps. This was the mind of someone raised with tutors, discipline, and a royal education. "How did you know?" he asked. She hesitated, then tapped her forehead lightly. "Memory. Coming back." Elias nodded, trying not to overwhelm her with questions. He didn't push. Her past would return, piece by piece. But her improvement didn't go unnoticed. A few miners began whispering, "That scrap girl. She stands straight now. Someone said she speaks. She looks different, cleaner, and why is she always with the engineer?" Rumors spread through the small settlement. People who once ignored her now stared at her with suspicion. Some wondered if she was hiding something valuable. Others wondered if Elias was helping her for personal reasons. One evening, Elias and Lyra sat behind the generator hut, sharing a quiet moment. She ate slowly now, no longer rushing like a starving animal. Elias handed her a warm drink, and she held the cup with careful fingers, glancing around to make sure no one was watching. "You don't have to fear me," he said gently. "But others," she whispered. "They look. They talk." Elias sighed. "People talk about anything they don't understand." Lyra lowered her head. "You deserve more than survival," Elias replied. "You deserve peace." The word peace made her eyes glisten. She looked at him with deep sadness. "My people, gone. My home, gone. Only me left." Elias shook his head. "Not gone. Scattered. Hiding, maybe. but alive somewhere. But we can't find them here. Not on this moon. Lyra stared at him, unsure what he meant. Lyra, he continued, if those soldiers who destroyed your empire learn you survived, they'll come for you. Some bounty hunters would capture you for money. We need to get you off this moon. Her breath caught. Leave? How? There's a weekly freight shuttle, Elias explained. If I can get us on board, we can escape before anyone realizes who you are. Lyra froze, overwhelmed. She had only just learned to trust him. Leaving the moon meant stepping into the unknown again. Yet staying meant danger. Elias, I scared, she whispered. I know, he said softly. But you won't face any of it alone. For the first time, she reached out and lightly held his sleeve. A small gesture, but full of trust. Elias placed his hand gently on hers to reassure her. In the following days, the situation grew worse. More people noticed Lyra's changes. Her posture had become elegant, her voice clearer, her steps lighter. She no longer blended into the shadows. Someone even caught a glimpse of her wrist mark, though she quickly hid it. A miner muttered, "Something's off about that girl. No scavenger moves like that." Another added, "Maybe she escaped from some rich family. We could sell her." Elias overheard these whispers and immediately felt danger creeping closer. He told Lyra to stay near the repair hut and avoid the open yard. She obeyed, though fear returned to her eyes. But trouble didn't wait. Late one evening, as the sky outside turned a deep violet, Elias finished locking up the tool shed and looked around for Lyra. She wasn't where he left her. Panic flashed through him. He searched the yard quickly, checking corners, under pipelines, behind crates. Then he heard voices. Angry, excited voices coming from behind the supply depot. "There she is. Grab her." Elias ran. He reached the back of the depot and saw 3 miners surrounding Lyra. She was pressed against a metal wall. Her arms curled around herself, her eyes wide with fear. One miner grabbed her wrist roughly, trying to pull her forward. "She's got a symbol here," he said. "Told you she ain't normal." "Let's take her to the broker," another said. Before they could drag her away, Elias stepped between them, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Let her go." The men turned. "This is none of your business, engineer." The tallest one said, "We know she's special. She'll fetch good money." "She's under my protection," Elias replied with steady eyes. The men laughed. "Your protection?" Elias didn't argue. He didn't threaten. He only spoke with quiet confidence. "Take one more step, and you'll regret it." His expression wasn't angry or loud. It was calm, too calm. They weren't brave enough to start a fight with someone who might know dangerous systems in the mining station, someone who could turn off their air supply or report them to security. After a tense moment, the men backed away, muttering curses. When they were gone, Lyra collapsed against the wall, shaking. Elias knelt beside her. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head but couldn't stop trembling. They know. They try. Take me." "I won't let anyone take you," Elias said firmly. Tears spilled from her eyes, and she covered her face with her hands. Not out of weakness, but because the fear she had buried for months suddenly burst out. "Elias, they come again," she whispered. "Others come too." He nodded slowly. "Yes, that's why we must leave soon." Before word spreads, Lyra wiped her tears with shaky fingers. "When?" 3 days, Elias said. "That's when the freight shuttle lands. I'll prepare everything." The next days were tense. Elias gathered stolen ID chips, copied access codes, and rewired a cargo manifest to include 2 new entries' names that didn't belong to them. Lyra stayed hidden in the maintenance shafts, resting on blankets he brought. He brought her food, taught her simple phrases, and helped her regain her strength. Sometimes, she woke up from nightmares, memories of soldiers breaking into the royal palace, explosions, the screams of her guardians, the crash on a ruined planet. When she trembled, Elias stayed beside her until she calmed. "You are safe," he repeated each time. Gradually, she began believing him, but others were looking too. Strange visitors arrived on the moon, tall figures in dark coats, wearing scanners. They questioned miners, looked at old refugee lists, and even asked about a thin alien girl wandering the settlement. Lyra's name had begun spreading beyond whispers. Elias hurried his preparations. He packed emergency rations, water, thermal blankets, and small tools into a hidden crate. He studied the freight shuttle's map of corridors so he could hide Lyra quickly. But danger arrived sooner than expected. The night before their planned escape, Lyra and Elias were eating quietly in the generator tunnel when the warning siren sounded. Heavy boots echoed outside. Someone shouted orders. "They're here!" a panicked voice cried. "Search team!" Lyra froze. Her heart raced. Her eyes filled with terror. Elias grabbed her hand. "Stay with me." Together they ran into the narrow maintenance shafts, the only paths unknown to outsiders. Elias led her through dark tunnels, squeezing between pipes and climbing small ladders. Lyra followed him closely, trusting every step. Above them, search teams shouted, "Find the girl, she's close, spread out." Elias whispered, "Don't make a sound." They hid behind an engine core while the soldiers passed only a meter away. Lyra clutched Elias's sleeve tightly, her breath trembling. He placed a reassuring hand on hers. When the soldiers moved on, Elias leaned close and murmured, "We must reach the shuttle yard now. It's our only chance." Lyra nodded, and together they slipped through the shadows, racing toward the one hope she had left: freedom. The air inside the maintenance tunnels felt tight and heavy as Elias and Lyra moved through the dark metal pathways. The search teams were everywhere. Their boots hit the ground hard. Their scanners hummed, and their voices echoed through the narrow spaces of the mining station. Every sound made Lyra flinch. Every shout made her heart jump. Elias kept her hand firmly in his, guiding her through the maze he knew better than anyone. His mind raced. They had to reach the shuttle dock before the search teams blocked the entrance. If they missed their chance, there would be no escape, not today, not ever. A distant metal door slammed open. Someone shouted, "Check the lower shafts. She must be hiding." Lyra pressed closer to Elias, breathing quickly. "They come," she whispered in fear. "I know," he whispered back. "But they won't find us. Trust me." She nodded, though her legs trembled. Elias squeezed her hand gently before moving again. They crawled through a long ventilation shaft and reached a corner that overlooked part of the shuttle yard. Lyra peeked through the grate and gasped. The massive freight shuttle sat on the landing pad, lights glowing under its hull, engines warming for departure. It looked like a silver bird ready to fly. But soldiers stood everywhere, helmeted, armed, scanning every corner. Lyra's heart sank. So many. "We'll get past them," Elias said, thinking fast. "There's a blind spot behind the fuel tanks. If we reach that area, no scanner can detect us." "How reach?" she asked, worried. "We go under," Elias answered. He pointed to a maintenance tunnel a few meters below. It was narrow, dark, and dirty, but it led directly toward the back of the shuttle. Lyra swallowed hard. She had spent months hiding in dirt and shadows, but now every dark tunnel reminded her of fear and loneliness. She looked at Elias. He smiled softly. "I'm with you." She took a deep breath and nodded. They dropped quietly into the tunnel, landing on metal plates that echoed faintly. Lyra froze, but no one heard them. Elias motioned for her to stay low. They crouched and walked through the narrow passage, moving slowly while listening to search teams above. As they moved, Lyra whispered, "Elias, why you help me? Many people look at me and see trash, but you see something else." Elias didn't stop walking, but his voice was gentle. "Because you're not trash. You're someone who suffered, Someone who deserves kindness. But you risk your life, she said. I know, he replied simply. Some people are worth risking everything for. Lyra's chest tightened. No one had ever spoken to her like that, not even in her old life before the fall of her empire. She walked silently, her eyes stinging with emotion she didn't fully understand. They reached a point where the tunnel ended abruptly. A metal panel covered the exit, but Elias had prepared for this. He pulled out a small tool and quietly unscrewed the bolts. The panel came loose with a soft click. Cool air rushed in. Beyond the opening was the back of the shuttle dock. Massive fuel pipes twisted above them like giant metal snakes. Crates were stacked nearby. And most importantly, no soldiers stood in that corner. We're close, Elias whispered. Follow me. Stay behind the crates. Lyra nodded, her heart pounding. They slipped out, crawling behind a row of containers. Elias checked around each corner carefully. Every second felt long. Every movement felt dangerous. Once, a soldier walked so close that Lyra could see the dust on his boots. She held her breath, hiding behind Elias's shoulder until the man left. Finally, they reached the shuttle's loading ramp metal base. The ramp was still closed, but Elias knew another way inside. He guided her to a maintenance hatch, small, rusty, and half-broken. Most people didn't even know it existed. Elias knelt and began to work on the panel lock. Lyra watched anxiously, glancing behind them every few seconds. Hurry, she whispered. They could come. I'm trying, Elias said, his fingers moving quickly. The lock sparked once, then twice. Lyra's worry grew. She wanted to help, but didn't know how. Soldiers began shouting in the distance. Check the cargo area next. They're coming closer, Lyra whispered urgently. Elias breathed deeply and pressed the final wire. The lock clicked open. The hatch door slid aside, just enough for a person to slip through. Elias looked at Lyra. Go inside. Quickly. Lyra hesitated. She didn't want to leave him even for a moment. But she nodded and crawled through the opening. Inside was a narrow service corridor, filled with pipes and dim lights. She turned back. Elias? He handed her a small pack, food, water, blankets, and tools. Stay here. I'll close the hatch, so no one sees. No, she said, grabbing his wrist. You come too. He smiled. Of course. I just need 2 seconds. He pulled the hatch shut behind him and sealed it. Then he joined her in the narrow corridor. We made it, he whispered. Lyra's breath shook with relief. She touched his arm softly. Thank you. Again. We're not safe yet, he said. The shuttle engines hummed louder. The floor vibrated gently. The ship was preparing to depart. Elias knew they had only minutes before the crew checked the systems. We need to hide, he said. There's a cargo compartment deeper inside. Follow me. They moved through the small corridor until they reached a storage room filled with sealed crates. Elias found an empty space between 2 large boxes and motioned Lyra inside. She crawled in, curling up carefully. Elias slid in beside her, covering the opening with a loose tarp. The space was warm and cramped. They sat close, knees touching. Outside, footsteps moved around as crew members prepared the ship. Lyra whispered, Will they find us? No, Elias answered calmly. Not if we stay quiet. She trusted him completely. Being so close to him made her feel safe. A strange warmth spread in her chest, not fear, not sadness. Something gentle. The engines roared. The shuttle lifted from the ground. Lyra gasped softly as her body rose. She grabbed Elias's sleeve instinctively. He steadied her with his hand. Unline. It's okay, he whispered near her ear. We're leaving the moon. The rumbling grew louder. The ship shook lightly. After a few long minutes, the vibration softened. Then, silence, smooth. Peaceful silence. Lyra opened her eyes slowly. We... in space? Yes, Elias said. We escaped. For the first time since he found her months ago, Lyra felt hope, real hope. She closed her eyes and let out a breath she had held for too long. But something unexpected happened. A voice echoed through the hallway outside the cargo compartment. Cargo team. To Deck 2. We detected an unauthorized hatch opening. Check it. Lyra's heart froze. Elias's eyes widened. They noticed the hatch, he whispered. We have to move. He helped her out from the hiding space. Together, they hurried down a narrow service walkway. The ship's layout was complex, but Elias knew where shadows gathered and where scanners couldn't reach. Lyra followed close behind him, her steps light and silent. Voices grew closer. Search every compartment. They couldn't get far. Elias led her into a small chamber with old coolant pipes. It wasn't comfortable, but it was hidden well. They crouched inside the darkness. Lyra pressed her back to the metal wall. Elias sat beside her, listening to every sound. Footsteps approached. A flashlight beam passed under the door. Lyra grabbed Elias's arm tightly. He covered her hand gently, telling her without words to stay quiet. The searchers talked outside. No one here. Move to the next level. Their steps faded. Lyra finally breathed again. Her body relaxed slowly. She turned to Elias. We almost caught. On. We weren't, he said softly. Because you stayed calm. She shook her head. I calm because you here. Elias felt warmth rise in his chest. He didn't speak. There was no need. For hours, they remained hidden as the shuttle traveled through space. When the crew finally ended their search, Elias left briefly to gather food and water from a supply room. Lyra stayed hidden, waiting anxiously until he returned. When he came back, she lowered her head in relief. I worry, she admitted. I promised I won't leave you, Elias said. I meant it. She met his eyes, and her voice softened. I believe you. Later, as the shuttle drifted quietly through the galaxy, Lyra sat beside Elias, watching through a small maintenance window. Stars stretched across the dark like glowing rivers. Her eyes reflected them. So beautiful, she whispered. Not as beautiful as freedom, Elias replied. She turned to him with a small smile. Not as beautiful as kindness. Elias looked at her, the girl he found eating scraps in the dust, the girl who rose from fear to become herself again. Not a scavenger. Not a creature. But a princess. What now? She asked softly. Now, Elias said. We find your people. We find anyone who survived. And if no one did, we build a new home. Lyra's heart warmed. She leaned slightly toward him, not touching, but close enough to feel his presence. Together? She asked quietly. Always, he replied. The freight shuttle carried them through stars toward an unknown future. But for the first time in a long, painful journey, Lyra felt safe. Not because she was hiding, but because she wasn't alone anymore. Elias had seen the princess beneath the dust. And now, the galaxy would soon see her too.